All right, here we are back again for Wednesday webinars. How is everybody? I hope, hopefully, this is Ernie Delgado, by the way, CEO of Beyond Technology Education. I always forget to introduce myself. I figured we're all friends, we all know each other at this point in time. Why keep reintroducing myself? But in the event you haven't seen us before, anyway, I hope you all feel like I feel, some optimism, some hope. Things are somewhat back on track. I really feel good. It's been a crazy year. When we started doing the weekly Wednesday webinars, it was because teachers were kind of out of ideas. We're transitioning from classroom to online instruction, at home, virtual learning. What do we do? And we immediately just started providing resources, no cost. Hopefully you've watched a lot of our videos. And so we started the whole, Wednesday webinar concept. And we're not doing a weekly, it's actually bi-weekly-ish. But we've had some great topics. And what I would like to share with you is if you've heard anything throughout our webinar series that you're interested in, if you need some help, if you're looking for resources to help prepare for next year, going back into the classroom, having dual environments, whatever it is, please reach out to us. Go to our website, beyondk12.com, find the free analysis box at the bottom of the screen. We'd be happy to have a free phone call, talk about what your needs are. In lieu of that, we have done lots of webinars, and some of the content that we have been creating is first class. In fact, a lot of people have asked, can you elaborate on some of these topics? So we are in the process of creating courses that you can purchase, very low cost, but really gives you A to Z on how to use a lot of these tools and really how to be a more a technologically advanced educator, because that's the name of the game these days. Your job is different. Now, many of you were forced into digital learning, digital tools. Some of you liked it, some of you didn't. But we're preparing students for a very different future. What we're preparing them is off the charts compared to what we got prepared for. So to do that well requires a more effective teacher, requires a teacher with higher skill sets that can really challenge students and demonstrate use of tools. And you're going to see some of that today. And I encourage you to go back and watch some of our old videos. If you're interested in watching any of them, we do have a Facebook group up. It's called the Classroom Technology User Group, CTUG. If you go to Facebook, just type in Classroom Technology User Group, join the group. All the videos are there for free. Share them with your friends. If you're not a Facebook user, I don't blame you. I'm on the fence myself. Send me an email, ernie@beyondk12.com, and I'll send you a link. If you find our YouTube channel, it's not pretty yet, but we're also on YouTube, and a lot of them are there. And I do encourage you to reach out. The modifying curriculum piece of the puzzle is a lot of people need help. We're going back into the classroom next year, for most of us, and there's a lot of strategies that we can help you implement to prepare everybody, regardless of what environment you're using. If you're a G Suite environment, a Microsoft environment, whatever it is, we can help. So please reach out to us and let us do that. So real quick, I bounced the wrong way. So I'm really excited to introduce our speaker for today. Jennifer Gullidge is, among the finest people we have on staff, and she is our curriculum director. She's been with us for many, many years. I'm going to invite her. Jennifer, you're about to get an invitation to present. Accept that, and I'll let you take it from there when you're ready. There she is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce our curriculum director, Jennifer Gullidge. Enjoy, Jennifer. Have a great webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, Ernie, so much. Hey, everyone. My name is Jennifer Gullidge, and today we're going to be focusing our time on how to design and construct a virtual space using avatars, objects, graphics, to really just engage your students. And so let's go ahead and get started. Before we actually dive into the topics itself, I want to just give you a little background about me. I am an educator. I've been an educator for over 16 years. I've been in the classroom as a teacher in an elementary, junior high, and high school levels. I've done professional development with teachers, and I've helped them integrate their educational technology with their content. And currently, I am developing computer science curriculum for BTE PE. I also have two children, as a third grader and a sixth grader, and they're both back in the classroom now, so we're really excited about that. And the reason why I'm here, why I'm doing this presentation for you guys, is that honestly, I just really have a love of learning, and I'm really passionate about student engagement. And I feel that this particular topic is a great opportunity for us to be able to reach out and connect with our students. So here we go. In Our objective for today is you are going to be learning strategies on how to construct this virtual space for your students, for them to be able to interact as a community, interact with each other, and just build up your class family. So whether you've transitioned fully back into your classroom, you're doing a hybrid schedule, or still even on remote or distance learning, this virtual classroom space can really engage your students. Okay, so let's just get right into it. What is a Bitmoji Classroom? Plain and simple, it's a multimedia presentation that uses objects, graphics to help you interact with your students. They can click on them, they can engage with them. There's so many positive benefits to be creating this Bitmoji Classroom to create this virtual space with your students. Back about a year ago, when our country went down to remote teaching, teachers were really scrambling for ways to engage with their students. So maybe some of you have heard of the Bitmoji Classroom before. Maybe some of you have seen some samples, but you've never built one. Or maybe you've started to build one, and now you're looking for unique ideas to build on top of that. So we are all on our own journey using technology in our classroom. And today I really with some great takeaways. I'm a visual learner, so I wanted to share with you some examples before we get into actually designing our Bitmoji classroom. Um, all of my examples are from a Facebook group called Bitmoji Craze for Educators. If you're on Facebook, this is a great place for you to connect with other educators that are like-minded. It started off as simply as this Bitmoji Classroom, but as it's developed, uh, teachers are sharing all sorts of information. They're going on there, they're asking questions, they're sharing lesson plans, all sorts of digital ways that you can connect with your class, you can find on this Bitmoji Craze. So these are some actual authentic Bitmoji classrooms. So a Bitmoji classroom can be used as a community space. So what does that mean? A space where your students would be meeting, like in your classroom, to have your class meetings, maybe to introduce a topic, to talk about, spelling, or any type of lesson that's either on the weekly basis or on a daily basis. So this would be a space where you would create that familiarity with your students, that they would come to on a routine basis to learn about certain information, and they would know what objects in this virtual space that they can click on and that they can engage in. Some people have really made this space look just like their traditional classroom to really connect with the students. And some people have just made it fun looking. So that's kind of up to you, but it's a fun space to make it personal with your students. Another way that you can use a Bitmoji Classroom is as a library. And I really love this take on a virtual space, because even if you are in a traditional classroom right now, if you've gone back and you're fully immersed in school, depending upon the comfortability of your private school or school district, a lot of kids are not sharing or sharing textbooks, sharing books. So whether you had a traditional class library or even your school has a library, they're not really operating right now. So this is a great space for you to still introduce books to your students, You can create libraries that are towards their reading levels. You can create libraries that are towards the theme that you're talking about in your class. I've got a historical fiction one on here. You can create a library that's not just with books, but with some videos to go with content. We just had Earth Day, so this is like an Earth Day bring break that the kids could participate in. You could also do it if it's like math. Maybe you have some math videos in there. So you're creating a library of whatever it could be. This is another fun way for you to engage with your students. You can also create these virtual spaces as lesson engagement. So taking the content that you're teaching in class already, the standards, and integrating it into the technology for students to really thrive and engage on that content, for them to interact, for them to learn, for them maybe to be curious and connect on different levels. This is a really fun opportunity, and you can create like a virtual field trip. I've just got some random samples here. Okay, what technology tools are needed? So now that we kind of have this base and this foundation of what a Bitmoji Classroom is, I want to start diving into creating a virtual classroom. To do that, we need a few technology tools. We're going to use some Aviator, I don't know where that came from. We're going to use some avatar creators such as Bitmoji. We're going to talk about some productivity tools, going and figuring out where we're going to find our images. And I'm going to show you also how to remove some backgrounds to those images. So let's get started. Okay, so Bitmoji is a fantastic character tool that you can personalize and make this avatar look just like yourself. I have a video in here I'm going to play while I'm talking. Bitmoji is an app that you need to download on your phone or a tablet, and then you also use it on your computer. So you would download or open up your desktop, your laptop, you'd open up the Google Chrome, and then you're going to add the Bitmoji extension. And if you see right here, once you've opened up the extension, it pops open. And what you would be able to do is, after you've gone through and created this Bitmoji that looks just like you, as my video is showing how you can do that, you can then take the images and copy them and put them in whatever um, virtual space you are creating. So as we're going through my video, you can see that you can really personalize this person to look uniquely like you. You can add fun headwear, you can add glasses, you can change your outfit. So you could create a person every single week if you wanted to make it uniquely to you, relate it to your class. And once you've created this person, Bitmoji called stickers, where you can use keywords to search for your Bitmoji to look like you in a certain environment. So here's Bitmoji. I'm going to go ahead. The Bitmoji stickers are popping up. I'm going to type in school, and I get some pictures that are related to the school environment. So this would be something, if it connected with my virtual space, I would then, using my extension, I would copy that image over and I would put it into my virtual space. I want to show you an alternate way to create an avatar. This is using Pixton EDU. If you're not familiar with Pixton, it's just a fun place where you and your students can create comics, and you as a teacher can create a class, and your students can come in and then they can create their own comics. And it's really fun, but it's also, you can create these fun avatars, not just for yourself, but you can create them for your students, which I also think is fun, that if you wanted to create avatars of your students to put in your virtual space, this is a great location for you to do that. This is a web browser, so you would just go into the Pixton EDU after you signed in, you would create your avatar, and then you would download the image onto your computer. All right, I have something else that kind of levels it up. So if you're already using a Bitmoji Classroom and you want to know how you could take it to the next level, okay, instead of using an avatar, why don't you use yourself? Okay, this is a quick little video I made of myself. I made it in less than 2 minutes, and I just simply put myself, recorded a video of myself in a white background, just on a white wall. And then what I used is I used Unscreen to upload my clip right here. And in 5 seconds, it created this little GIF of me that now I can insert into my virtual space. So this is just a funny little hamster, but if you had some intentional movement that you wanted to make, if you wanted to point to something in your space or you wanted to wave to your students, using Unscreen to create a GIF of yourself is also a unique way to engage and connect with your students. And I thought this was really fun. Okay. To build your Bitmoji virtual classroom, you've got to use a productivity tool. You can use Google Slides, you can use Microsoft PowerPoint, or if you have another multimedia presentation platform that you want to use, that's okay. These two work very similar. I'm going to be using Google Slides today for the ease of it, and I think a lot of us are in Google Classroom and using the Google Suites, but Microsoft PowerPoint works the exact same way as Google Slides. And then the next thing that we're also going to want to have is some kind of image library. So whether you're using just a Google search for your images, that's okay. Maybe you have a designated place where you go to search images. But what I wanted to make sure that we are all mindful of is pulling in images that are okay to use. So I put the Creative Commons on here so that it's a good reminder for you. This is a great place for you to search for content that is okay for you to reuse in this environment. We never want to take, even if it's unintentional, an image that we're not supposed to be using. Okay, background remover. This is a must. When you are putting images into your Bitmoji Classroom, as you see my apple down here, a lot of times there's backgrounds for these images, and we don't want those backgrounds because we want the images to look authentic in our virtual space. So we need a background remover. Now, if you're using Microsoft PowerPoint, there's a transparency tool that's already built into the formatting features of the pictures that you can use. But if you're using Google Slides, there is not that feature. So using an outside background tool is wonderful. And I'm going to go ahead and try this for you. You can upload an image. You can also paste a URL. So I have the URL right here of this apple. And then I'm going to come right here to my remove background, and I'm going to paste my URL. As you can see, it's going to take about 30 seconds, and voila, now I have an apple. If you want to download it, you can, or you can simply copy it. So if I copy it and I come to my Bitmoji Classroom and I scroll down here to where my apple is and I want to paste it, now I have this Bitmoji apple without that background. So the background remover is a must technology tool while you're constructing. All right, let's talk about constructing. We've gone through these technology tools. You know what you kind of need to have to be able to build the Bitmoji Classroom. But now, how do you construct? The first thing is you should start with the end in mind. What is the goal of this classroom space? What are you wanting to achieve? What's that outcome? Are you wanting just this community space for your students to have in a routine basis for you to introduce information? Or are you wanting to create a field trip maybe? Maybe you want to create a library. You can create a digital escape room or even lesson engagement, which the field trip and escape room really does fall under lesson engagement, but I wanted to pull out those specific ideas for you. So really right now, if you're following along, really think about that. If you're here and you're wanting to create a Bitmoji Classroom, what is it that you're wanting to make? And now we're going to design it. You're going to need to think of yourself as a designer. We are going to need to construct the background. Then we're going to add the objects, the graphics, to make that virtual space come alive. I'm going to show you how to create links for really that student engagement. And finally, I'm going to show you how to be able to share. Once you've created this Bitmoji Classroom, how do you share it with your students? So let's go. Here's a Bitmoji Classroom that I have created for this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and we're going to open it right up, and it should be pulling up. Here we go. Okay. So let's just take a look at this Bitmoji Classroom, what we've got going on. It's just taking a quick minute because I have a lot of graphics, as you can see. I have it already opened up because I wasn't sure if that was going to happen. So as we look around my Bitmoji Classroom, I have created a virtual community space where I can introduce information to my students on a routine basis. For this particular one, I'm introducing the short A sound to my students if I was an elementary teacher, primary grade teacher. So let's talk about what is in my space, and then I'm going to show you how to build it. So in my space, you can see I have this floor down here. I have a wall. So there's kind of this like 3D dimension here going on. On my wall, I have this whiteboard. I have a bulletin board where I can put posters. I have a calendar also. So if I'm talking to my students about, in my morning meeting, maybe about the dates or some upcoming assignments, when things are due, I have my calendar to talk about that with my students. I have a computer on this desk that has an image, which is actually linked to a video that my students will know that they can always click on this video to give more context to the topic. And I have a bookshelf that allows me to put certain information into this space that's related to my topic. Since I'm talking about the short A, I've got an apple in here that I can help talk about that sound with my students. I have a book that is connected to my library. And then I have some binders in here. And this could be used for all sorts of reasons. Maybe you want to have, since this would be a community space that you would routinely use, maybe you want to have some stationary objects that the students know that they can always click on that will take them to certain things, like maybe rules of your classroom, or maybe one takes you to your Google Classroom or your school website. Maybe there's particular things in here that you'd want them to always be visiting. Maybe there's a reading program that they need to go to, whatever it might be. That could be a space that they could click on and it would open up something different. So let me put this in a presentation mode, and I'm going to show you a few things about my presentation. And then I'm going to talk to you about how we can fix this. So I have my presentation, and what happens is I can click on stuff. So right now, there's nothing for me to click on for this short A poster. If I put my mouse right here, I cannot click on it. But if I click on my computer screen, it will bring me to a video that will bring me to the short A sound. And we don't need to pull that up, but that's what it would do for my students as well. Okay. And then I also have this book over here that if I click on, it brings me then to a class library. Now, this is just a graphic for our lesson, but if you actually had a graphic, a library, then that would be in there. So if it's in a presentation mode, I can just move backwards and forwards and I can see everything. And we don't want to see all of the slides that are connected to my space. So I'm going to exit out and I'm going to show you how to fix that. Okay. The first thing, it's an easy fix. So while we're talking about it, I'm just going to show it to you. If I don't want a particular slide to show, I just click on that slide and I choose skip slide. And now that slide, if it was in a presentation mode, would not show up. We're going to come back to that. But so here's my Bitmoji Classroom. Let's figure out how to make the background. I want to show you guys how to make a background. So I'm going to enter just a slide. We don't want anything on it. So I'm going to delete these. I want to insert an image from the web. So I'm going to use Google search from my image library, and I want to put in wood floors. This is what I want my community space to look like. So I'm going to click on a picture of wood floors. And when you do that and you insert that picture, voila, it comes up. But I don't want it covering my whole space. I want it just to cover part of my space. So I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to move it over a little bit and down a little bit and stretch it out a little bit. Now this image looks fine stretched out. It looks just like really big wood planks. But if you didn't like the look of it stretching out, you could just duplicate it. So if I put it right here in the middle and then I just copied it and I pasted it and I got 2 of them and I could put them right here. So the design now, and then you'd have to ask yourself, well, does that look okay? The colors are a little off. So you'd have to play with that yourself. The design aspect, you can honestly take so much time designing out what you want it to look like. So be ready for that. Be ready to take time. I'm going to put a shape in here. And the reason I'm going to put a shape in here is you will see what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a little molding that's going to give a dimension between my floor and my wall. And I kind of made the floor a little too big. Maybe I want to scrunch it down a little bit. I want to put a lot on my wall. So then I'm going to move that. Now my wall is just the background of the slide right now. You could put something else on there if you wanted to. I'm just going to change the color of the background. And let's try light blue. Oh yeah, that's pretty. And then there I've got the background. And now that I've created this kind of canvas to work on, I've got my classroom. Now I can just add those images and I can add my Bitmojis and I can add whatever I want to make my class come alive. I'm not going to do that for the sake of time because I've already got all these objects and that can really take a long time. So for the sake of time, I'm going to move on and I'm going to show you how to add links and how to make these objects interactive. Once you've got all your objects and you've kind of got this design of what you want your space to look like, now we've got to make it fun and engaging. How am I going to engage with my students? Well, the first thing is I have this poster right here. And if I want to connect that to a different slide where I can engage with my students even more so on this particular topic, I've created a slide right here called Short A Words. And this would be maybe an engaging activity I would do with my students. So we could really talk about each one of these sounds. If we were together in a class, maybe I'd have them say them out loud. And so we could all hear. If they were at home, I'd have them maybe one person bounce in at a time. Maybe this would be something we could do in a breakout room. However you would want to do it, you could do it that way. I'm going to go ahead and come up here to my Bitmoji little image search. And I'm going to find a picture that I had already searched for one earlier, and it was an Apple one. And I thought this would be a fun one to put into my space over here. So you could do it what I just did, which was I dragged it. And now I've got this fun little Bitmoji of me coming out of an apple. And I can make it smaller. And it's just a little fun way, just a little personal touch on this little slide I would do with my students. So I have this slide right here. I'm going to come back up to my virtual classroom. How am I going to get them connected? I'm going to add a link. So I'm going to click on my poster and I am going to come right here to where it says insert link. And when I do that, it allows me to link up this object to anything. It could be a URL or it could be a slide in this presentation, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to click on the slide. I'm going to go to my short A words, and now I'm going to press apply, and it's there. Okay, and I know this is an elementary topic, but think of it if you're a junior high or high school teacher, it could be something that you're doing in language arts with your students. It could be a math topic. It could be any subject related. This is just so happens to be vowel sounds. Okay, so now if I was in a presentation mode, yep, and I want it to click on my short A, now it would directly bring me up to this. So I would be able to do this with my students, or if my students were going to this virtual space on their own, they would be able to see whatever was on this particular slide. I also have this calendar here, and we touched on it when I was introducing this slide, but something that now that I'm talking about making links, you could link it up to your Google Calendar if you wanted to. You could link it up to an assignment. You could link it up to anything for your kids to click on. Maybe it's your school calendar, maybe it's a lunch menu, whatever kind of calendar you might want to link it up to, you could always do that. So your students would always be in the know of what's going on in your classroom. If this was say this was your classroom calendar and you had all the assignments posted, they could see an overview of like a week at the glance, maybe a month at a glance. They could see if a special project or assignment was due. That would be really fun. Okay. Now, like how I did earlier for the slide number 3, where I had my short A sounds and I skipped the slide while presenting, I also want to skip my library slide. And this slide as well, I'm going to go ahead and skip it. So when I'm in that presentation mode with my students, they can click, they can't do anything. They can't go backwards or forwards. The only thing that they can see is this virtual space. And to get to any of the other slides that are linked up, the other classrooms that might be linked up, to get to any of the URLs, they have to go around and they have to be able to click on the interactive images. Right? So if they clicked on the video, if they clicked on my short A words, and right now my little ACAT book are the 3 objects that are in here that are interactive. That's a really useful tip to be able to skip the slides so your students aren't seeing them. Now, something that you might ask me is that if you just is about sharing this with your students and you want to share your Bitmoji Classroom with your students, what is the best option for sharing? Okay, if I just shared this file with my students, then they would see, first of all, the entire presentation. And they could come in here and they wouldn't know exactly what to click on. And by doing that, they have the ability to move stuff around. Do you see how, like, if I was a student, I could come in here and I could just start clicking and it could really just mess up the whole virtual space and it could confuse them and it could be a really big mess. So there's a few things that you can do in this case. One, you can lock in your images. So you can create a master slide. That gets a little time consuming, but you can create a master slide. And so everything that your students are seeing, they're locked in. There are certain things in here that are locked in that they cannot touch. You can also group the images. So if you had certain images like I have right here, and I didn't want them to be moved around, I could group them. And I do want to show you, if you come right here to slide, you can come up here where it says edit master, and then that's where you would go and you can then build in your master so your students can't touch any of this stuff. So let me get out of this master. There we go. Okay. So that's 2 options. One, you can build your background like this, and you can put that, save it as an image. You can come up here to background, and you can put an image in your slide so the kids aren't clicking on anything. It's just simply right there. So that's another option that you can do it. I would only worry about this if you wanted your students to actually get into the Bitmoji Classroom to be able to do things with the slides. So for instance, if the directions for this was to click and to actually type in, and you wanted your students to do that. Otherwise, let me show you what you can do. If you come over here to File, you can go to what says Publish the Web. And by publishing your presentation, it will give the students a link. I'm going to say, okay. And now I've gotten a link. And now I can come up here and I can go ahead and paste. And now it brings this up as a link. And the only thing that my students can do is click on the things that are interactive. So how fun is this? You can put this Google Classroom slide wherever you want. You can put it in your Google Classroom. You can put it, if you had a website for your students, you can embed this into that website. You can put it anywhere you want. So now you've just made this virtual space really accessible to your students because it doesn't have to be in the Google Slides platform. You can just have it sitting here like this as a link. If you don't want to do it that way, I'm going to show you one more way that you can do it, which is come over here to present. I'm sorry, not to present, to share. And you're going to click share. And you can share, get a link, and you can do this with anyone on the internet can just view it. So you don't want, if you change the viewer, you don't want your students probably to edit or comment in it, right? Because you don't want them to change around what you've got going on. So you can simply just copy the link and your students will have access to it that way. You can, again, put it up in your Google Classroom. You can put it in another presentation. Like if you have a slide deck, a weekly slide deck that you do, you can just put that link there and your students would have it wherever you want it, it would be right there. And I think that's all I've got for us today. So if there's some questions that I can help give answers, anyone out there that's got some questions that, maybe there's a specific, you've come on here, you've already started doing a Bitmoji Classroom, but you have a question. If there's anything out there, I'd be more than willing to help answer.
All right, Jen, that was great information. Real exciting stuff. Now there is a Q&A panel there on your panel, on your GoToWebinar panel. If there's any questions, let's get to them now. Jen, how long would you say it takes to really get something up and put together that will work well with students? Is it half an hour? Is it a half a day? Is it half a week? What is your estimation?
No, that's a great question. So to create something very basic like the one that I did probably took an hour.
Okay.
And I think it kind of depends on what you're looking for to get out of your Bitmoji Classroom. If you were creating a library, for instance, um, am I still sharing my screen?
I still see, yeah, I see the
Okay,
bookshelf.
perfect. So if you were going to, I just used a graphic for this because this would be more of a labor intensive process because you would get the images of your books or whatever you're wanting to put into your library, and then you're going to link all of them. So whether you're linking them to your own personal read aloud that you've done, maybe you've made a video and you're going to link it, maybe there's something already on YouTube, maybe you're linking it, the author has a website that the kids can go directly to, maybe you're
Mhm.
linking it to like an Epic Books or a different type of a platform for your students to engage in. Maybe it's linked to your school, maybe they're connected to that digital a library. So creating a library, I think, is labor intensive. It's going to take time and patience. So you would want to set out a particular amount of time to build it. But the neat thing about these Bitmoji classrooms is as you're building them, you can you can create it and continue to create it, right? It's
Okay.
not like a one you've done it and now you can't go back to it. So
Mhm.
I think as you evolve with your students, if you're looking for something just to quickly get out there to engage with your students, go ahead and try one, make one. Test it out with your students, see how well it works with your students, and then create another version, right? We can
Mhm.
always continue to work on that process. And as you have time, or as you see maybe something works or doesn't work, or you see a need. So if I go back to my actual space I have right here, like I said, I have these books down here, these textbooks, these little binders. And so maybe you see that students are really, there's a need there.
Mhm.
Maybe you're talking about a particular topic and they just aren't getting it. And so you can then create like a Google document that's got like a list of resources for your students to go to. So and then link it to one of these little, for instance, I have books, but you could link it
Mhm.
to anything, maybe a clipboard or whatever you've got in there. And
Mhm.
it's something that you could continuously be building. So it doesn't have to be finished right away to
Right.
use it.
It's editable. It's something you could keep on growing and growing. Well, that's
Yes.
awesome. That's real awesome. Okay, let me ask you this other question. So this is a tool you love to use. Is there like a set, like if you were to like say your top four apps, I like to call it the EdTech Stack. What are you keep on mentioning Google G Suite, of course, that's Classroom, everyone loves that. But what other tools do you think are just must know tools for teachers?
Oh, okay. For teachers, I thought you were going to come back to this. Let me just say this real fast. This is a really useful tool. I mentioned it at the beginning of the presentation, but the remove tool is a must tool if you're building these virtual spaces. It will save you a lot of time. And also, another tip that you can do when you're looking for images is that you can write in the word transparent. So if I was looking for an apple, and so my keywords would be apple transparent. And that's what I would search for, and I could find images that way. But it's not always so clean cut like that, especially when you're looking for furniture. You might be able to find a desk, but it's in another environment that you want to remove that background from. So I find having this background removal tool a must when you're building these virtual spaces. So, just in general, though, to have useful tools, you want a communication tool that you're being able to communicate with your students. I think using a tool such as Remind is really helpful with your students to be able to just give them any sorts of information, whether it's to remind them of an assignment that they're supposed to be working on, a test. Like you could just send Remind, if you don't know what Remind is, it's a messaging app, but it goes through the app, so there's no personal phone numbers. Your students don't have
Mhm.
your personal phone number. You don't have the students. You have your class Remind code, and that sends just these messages out to students and parents, right? You want your parents to also be in the know. So I find Remind to be a really good, useful communication tool. um, let's see, what's another really good tool to have on your, oh, I feel like I've kind of talked
You,
so much I lost your question. What was your question?
I just want to know what you thought your favorite tools were. You mentioned Remind, you mentioned Google, you mentioned Bitmoji Classroom.
Yes.
Yeah, just putting you on the spot there.
Screencastify. Yeah, no,
Screencastify.
yeah, being able to quickly make some videos to give to students that might be struggling with the concept.
Mhm.
Something that I find really important right now, while we're kind of all in different spots with being fully immersed in the classroom, or whether you're doing a hybrid or you're in virtual learning, is that there's so many moving pieces for information to get lost. So whether
Mhm.
that's lost to your students, where they're not retaining that, maybe that lesson that you're talking about in class, because they're thinking about, you know, their hectic schedule, or they're at home and they're distracted. So Screencastify is a really good tool to use to make small little videos for your students to maybe recover important topics, or to go over guidelines or a rubric for a particular assignment. If you've created an assignment for your students, I find having one place that your students can go back to if they missed it the first time is a really great tip right now while life is just in transition.
Yeah, yeah. Good stuff, Jen. And for a lot of you who are not aware, Jennifer actually is in charge of our curriculum development here at Beyond Technology, and she's just putting the finishing touches on next year's computer science curriculum. On the invitation you got for this webinar, there was a box where you could actually get a free sample, free unit of the curriculum just to evaluate it and see if it's something you're interested in using in your classroom, or if you're a computer teacher for your school. And we encourage you to do that. If you just want to, send me a quick note, Ernie at beyondk12.com. Hey, curriculum offer, Ernie, and we'd be happy to send that off to you. We're excited about next year's curriculum, and just getting ready to launch the marketing for that. And also, we're in the process of developing courses. As I mentioned, a lot of these webinars just weren't enough, and so a lot of educators are asking for more detail. Let's say I have one question, and then we're going to head off.
Sure.
Is there a way to receive a certificate of completion for attending this webinar? Well, Jen, do we want to create a certificate of completion for this webinar? We haven't done that in the past. It's come up a couple times. It's just one step that we kind of never got to. Tell you what, me and Jen will ask, we'll mold that question over and see if we get something out to all you guys. Anyway, with that said, Jen, great webinar again. You keep nailing them, keep knocking it out of the park. This webinar will be available for viewing on the Facebook group, Classroom Technology User Group, also on the Beyond K-12 YouTube channel. And if you don't have either one of those, send me an email and I'd be happy to send you a link directly. All right, Jen, I guess that's it for today.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.